Hello, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's Just Antonio, where today's episode of It's Funny Now, Black Marriage Chronicles, highlights the evolution of black marriages with conversations from licensed therapist and marriage counselor Griselda Ramsey. It is my sincere hope and prayer to inspire recommitment, revival, and restoration of black marriages through the shared experience of others who have been through similar situations. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button before you go, and leave any questions or comments you have below. Now, here's my conversation with Griselda Ramsey.
Okay. All right. All
How's
right.
it going?
It's going okay. So, but the audio is good. You can see me fine.
I can absolutely, and I can hear you too.
Oh my God, the lighting is good. Awesome, awesome. So, how's your day today? Since we didn't train, did you get your trip down?
No, I woke up with a really bad headache this morning,
That's
and
because you didn't come to the gym.
it was either that or these braids I got yesterday. I don't know, but so my head just stopped hurting probably about an hour and a half ago. So we just started putting the stuff together to put the tree stuff in.
Oh, okay.
There, so
okay. All right. I was taking you didn't have trouble getting in because you chimed right back in.
Yes, it came right on.
All right, great. What is your take on like, because some of the myths about black marriages and the things, just some of the, can you dispel some of the myths about black marriages? Like, they don't survive, the divorce rate. I mean, we all know the divorce rate is high, period, not just among people of color, but just people, period. So what are some of the myths about black marriages that maybe you could dispel for us?
I mean, I think it's one situation. I think one of the things is that Black people don't get married, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, the reality is that there's a large number of households that are single parent women. And unfortunately for Black women, that's a higher rate. So, but I think when it comes to marriage, people generally want the same thing. They want to have love. They want to have companionship. They want to have somebody they can grow with. Mm-hmm. And that's no different because we're Black. Right. Black people want the same things. I think for me, it just depends on why people are getting connected in the first place. I don't care what nationality they are. Mm-hmm. If you're marrying a person for security, or you're marrying a person because they got money, or you're marrying a person because everybody else is getting married and this is the person that asked you, so whatever your reasons are for getting married, that pretty much sets your foundation for whether or not that relationship can last. Okay. Now, I do think people tend to pull the trigger to leave sooner than, now people don't have that let's try to work through it kind of thing. People just kind of, and I don't want to say that's race related, mm-hmm. Because I think in general, well, possibly, but I think in general it's just people have less patience. More people are staying together and not getting married. So people really have a ideology that marriage is not necessary. It's just a piece of paper. We don't have to get married to have a family. We don't have to get married to grow something together. Mm-hmm. But legally, there are some things that don't protect you when you do that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like if you're buying a house with somebody, or you're going to building businesses with people that you don't have legal documentation with, but you're connected to this person. Both of your names are on it, but you're not legally protected necessarily in that regard, because if it's not an LLC, then and you just got your name and their name on it. I mean, it's a whole lot of things that the institution of marriage protects. Right. And to me, I think marriages are sacred. And, I'm always saying, that's why I do a lot of marriage counseling, because I always say I'm a cheerleader for marriage. And I think the devil definitely has an attack on marriage, especially in Black families. Yes, because there are so many stereotypes as it relates to that, like our men don't stay, our men don't raise the children, our men, but statistically, I think if you take away
some of that's true though. Yeah,
It is. I'm going to say
unfortunately, no,
statistically,
it's
if you
true.
take for sure, but statistically, if you take away the higher percentage of our men that are in prison
Okay.
and the higher percentage of our men that are maybe more likely to be shot than not, then a lot of Black men want to be within the family with their children. They want to have a family. Like I said, most of us generally want the same thing. So while there are lots of stereotypes and truths about marriage in general, and especially in the Black family, I think a lot of it is, it's kind of like you have how they say like black people commit crimes. No, there's a small percentage of Black people that commit crimes.
Right.
But when you look at the media, it would have you to think that over
And
half
we
of Black
all out here
men,
robbing people and killing.
absolutely,
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely not true.
Right.
Or
Right.
how they say, Black people are all on food stamps. No, statistically, there are more Caucasian people that access the food stamp system than Black people.
Absolutely.
And then you look at the hierarchy of that. You look at farmers; they tap into that system, or a lot of other systems tap into that system.
Right.
So statistically, it's been always more Caucasian people that receive food benefit assistance than Black people.
Correct.
I mean, so it's just a matter of people need to do their research and not just listen to what they take what they hear as truth.
Right.
And then judge a whole population of people by that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So marriage, would you say that marriage has definitely changed, evolved from, because I hear a lot of women say, oh, I don't, this whole mentality, oh, I don't need a man. And while I also definitely understand why I applaud women taking their independence back, but you look at marriages, when my mom was married, and when she came up, and then look at my grandparents, you figure the marriage has evolved and changed over the years, where it looks like maybe back when my grandparents were married, it was almost like sometimes the woman stayed in the home and didn't really have a voice, but she stayed. It wasn't popular to be leaving. You should be a single woman with kids. You should be married. You should have a husband. It was promoted, but now we're at this point where you hear some women, oh, I don't need a man. I'm a boss of my own. I need a man to match me, match my efforts, which I totally understand. Everybody should come to the table with something, but I think sometimes some of us, us men, we're a little bit intimidated. Like women always talking about, I don't need a man. Well, what are we doing? If that makes sense.
It does, and I do hear that a lot. I think a lot of that is embedded in years of pain for women, for Black women. Like the whole to me it's all systematic. Like when you look at beyond the Vietnam War, you really start to see the breakdown in families from there. Like the men that came home, then you had that influx of drugs in the system. That's where you started to see when drugs came into the neighborhoods heavily at that point.
In our neighborhoods specifically.
Heavily at that point. Now you got the criminal justice system involved, where now men are being arrested, they're out of the home. So that's where you start to see our generation, you and I, we are the children of the beginning of that generation where the single parent home started kind of the breakdown. So to me, it's a systematic thing. So I think it comes from years of, women just being hurt, not having a voice. I don't need a man thing, I think is ludicrous to me. People say they don't need a man, but a lot of people want a man. So right. In instances, I think the whole premise of it is that, yes, you can do a lot of things on your own. Many of us have been forced to do that though, because our men have not been in the home, or we're having children with men that we know are not stable and they're not going to stay.
Right.
And that's partly on us. I think that we also play a role in the demise of how men operate in families, because we tolerate and accept a lot of things for the sake of having a man. Right. When we should set standards and stick to those standards, and encourage our brothers to step up to those standards.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Instead of dealing with a lot of stuff that we shouldn't have been dealing with in the first place. So we are a part of the problem, in my opinion. So the whole I don't need a man thing, we're not designed to do everything that a man does. Like I was a very independent person before I got married again. had my own home, my own job, my own education.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to be married. I wanted a husband. I don't want to have to be the one to always think about how this is going to get done, how that's going to get done, and how to pick up this, how to fix that. I don't want to be the one to think about that all the time.
Right.
So I'm very comfortable in who I am as a woman independently, but I'm very comfortable in being my husband's wife also.
Okay.
So part of that is a mentality thing. Part of that is out of pain and brokenness. And part of it is, I think, you know, again, when you go back to the 50s and 60s, that whole feminist movement kind of started shifting the mindset of women. Also, some of that stuff needed to change, because you're right. When you think about the baby boomer generation, which is our parents and then their parents, women had to stay in those marriages. Like, you don't get divorced.
Right.
Well, he's hitting on me. You don't get divorced. And well, he's not taking care of me. You don't get divorced. So women at the time were forced to stay in situations, and that's white women too, that were not healthy for them. So in that regard, it's good that people understood that, yes, I have a voice. No, I don't have to be treated like this. I don't have to stay in this situation.
Right.
So that gave them a voice on that regard. But at the same time, it kind of really shifted a lot of things on the other side of the spectrum. So, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of women say they don't need a man, and, you know, but it's a lot of women that's at home lonely, wishing they had a man. So I don't know what the truth is really about when people say that.
Right. And, you know, my part of my take on that is, you know, I also take that back to slavery, like, because black men were ripped from the home and were emasculated, sometimes right in front of their wives, in front of their family. You know what I'm saying? And so some of that just kind of carried over generationally, you know, not just an excuse, because when you know better, you should definitely do better. And I'm speaking to the black men. When you know better, you should do better. I've been guilty of some of that myself, because I know there was a period of time in my life where I know what's the word I'm looking for, where I kind of like, I promoted that degrading of women, you know, through our rap music and stuff like that, how that, you know, I don't need no B, and just, you know, just stuff like that. So I think some of that also played a part in it. But of course, as I grew and started becoming more aware of self-knowledge of myself and where I stood at in the relationship to how I was trying to either build my community or break it down, I started to say, okay, I need to do some self-check myself and like, hey, how am I playing a part in this, you know? But I definitely always equated back to slavery, because like I said, men, we were ripped from the home, sold off, and you didn't know when you knew you weren't gonna see your wife again. You know what I'm saying? Or the wife knew she wasn't gonna see her husband again if the slave master decided to sell her off or sell family off. It broke up the whole entire family. So
and it was intentional. And that
was intentional. Absolutely was intentional. Absolutely was intentional, because we were looked at as chattel, you know, property. So we to them, we didn't really matter. So yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I just want to know what your feeling was on that, because that's what I always believe. I always have a conversation with my wife about that. Just the breakdown of the family can also be traced back to slavery, you know. And people are like, people always want to bring up slavery because it's important. You can't forget that. That is something that happened for 400 years and still happening to some degree to this day.
Absolutely. I agree with that, and that is the origin of it. And then, like I said, when you get down beyond the Vietnam War, it just really kind of exacerbated. Like, it really kind of just
thought about it in those terms, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think the breakdown, because I remember my uncle telling me, he said one of the ways to bring back the Black community is through marriage. And I didn't understand it, but I understand it now. When he was telling me that, I didn't understand it, but I understand it now. And it really is, because we have to show our children that, hey, this is, if you believe in our people and again, I'm as far as and this will probably be another topic, but I have no problem with people who decide to date outside their race. I don't. My thing is, you love who you love. I get that. But if we're trying to build the Black community, the Black family, I understand what my uncle was coming from about, hey, the way to do that is through marriage. Get married. Of course, you have to, in order to build a Black community, you have to marry, someone that looks like your mom, your aunt, your sister, somebody like that. But in order to build the Black community back is through marriage. So, and then because then you get a chance to teach your children how this is supposed to look. And then they get a chance, they see that, okay, mom and dad, they had their ups and downs, but they stuck it out. Now they have a template in which to work from.
Yeah, and a lot of people now, like when you look at the millennial generation, which is the generation under us, I've heard many of them say that they don't want to get married because they've never seen healthy relationships, healthy marriages. They have not seen examples of healthy marriages. Like in their minds, the men in their family cheat. The men in their family are not stepping up to do what they're supposed to do. And that's unfortunate because, again, I think overall, that's not necessarily the norm, but that's the norm that you see. When you see an influx of a community where you got a predominantly single parent home led by Black females. So to them, that's the norm. Like I've heard people say it was like, well, like my friends that are older, like my mom's age, it's like, it was unusual if I saw one of my friends and they didn't have their dad in the home, because back then dad was in the home.
Right.
Now you hear, oh, your dad live with you? Now it's like the opposite now. You don't expect the dad to be in the home. So it's just kind of, and I think too, that depends on your community that you live in also. So, so it's just like a whole flip in the hierarchy. Back then I was telling somebody that before it was like church, family, community. And now that kind of has tipped the scale to the bottom. Where that's not as important of a priority to people now. Church definitely is not, because church was a big pillar in our community as a Black community and in lots of communities. So now it's like, even with that, that's not a real, significance or importance to serve God and worship God, which was the foundation of our families in general. So everything seems to have tipped upside down with that.
You mentioned something. Think about something, because if you go back to the motherland, we had the family was big. The community was big. It literally took a village to raise a child. But you mentioned something about going to church. Like I feel like, don't get me wrong, I was raised in the church. I haven't been in a long time, probably since before the pandemic. My wife is real, like she mentioned something about, since the pandemic is sort of ended, she mentioned something about going back to church. I don't know where I am on that. Not that I'm against church, because I was raised, I believe. I just don't know where I'm at right now. That's just where I am in my life at this point. There was a time where I was going to a church faithfully. I still pray and everything like that. But the reason I asked that is because I was just wondering, how is the church serving the Black community as it relates to marriage?
I think in general, the church is struggling, period. Like just for what I just said, like it's just not an importance in people's lives. So people are not even present enough for you to do a whole lot of things as it relates to church. But some churches have like marriage ministry. Some people have things they do as far as outreach and those kind of things. But again, even within the church, and I'm not saying again people should stay in situations where they're being abused or anything, but even amongst, when you look at church, like their divorce rate is even high in the church. So it's just a whole shift in the hierarchy of what's important in people's lives. And so even with like, since the pandemic, like people, even though the church doors have opened, even after all we went through with the pandemic and all we saw with the pandemic, people still have the mindset that it's not necessary. And so even with churches, like I was saying to people, I even said to our chief bishop before, like at this point, church as we knew it, how people worship, is not going to probably fully go back to the way it was. So like the presence of social media social media, for instance, as far as virtual worship, it's got to stay, because the bottom line is that there are people who are not going to return back to worship as we knew it before. So I don't really, as far as that's concerned, the only thing you could do is to really educate on the biblical foundation of marriage, and educate, and then make sure you have services to wrap around a family to kind of, help the family out to stay together, or to know that family is important. And the whole concept that you mentioned about it takes a village, because it does.
Right.
And church was always part of that village at some point. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been lots of things that have happened wrongly in the church, which has also turned people off the church,
Yeah. Probably particularly Black men, because they probably was looking for an excuse anyway.
And I don't even know where that shift was with, that's interesting research to do, the shift where, I guess it's probably been a standard for a long time, where the mother and the kids went to church, but there was a point in time when the family went to church, including the dad. So I'm interested to see where that shift even happened. But I think, a lot of men, they might think, well, my wife go to church, I'm good. No, you're not good, because everybody got to know the Lord for themselves.
True that. Exactly.
So
he's speaking to the choir right now. And my wife, don't get me wrong, she hasn't been yet, but she definitely has thrown that out there to me, like, hey, we need to get back in church, because just before the pandemic, we actually joined the church. We met a couple at a vegan restaurant, and they invited us out. So we went, and we actually liked it. And so I was like, okay, well, we can go in. No, she said she followed me up there because I went. So she was like, well, hey, you went. So we joined. She said, this is our church now. I'm like, okay, cool. But we actually, I think we went maybe 1 or 2 times, and then they had a lot of things for the kids. So we was going to bring the grandkids as well. But then after the pandemic, of course, everything shut down. I mean, when the pandemic hit, everything shut down. So we didn't go back. I think they had something virtual, and I think she got on, but I never kind of regained my interest after that. Just start delving into other things and just start getting in my prayer closet a little bit more. But yeah, that's kind of like how that went as far for me personally. And I believe at some point we definitely will be going back together. I know my wife is the kind of, like, she loves praise and worship. Like, her thing is, to me, I want to give me the word and let me get out. My wife want to go around. She wants to praise and worship. She want to go around and greet everybody in the church, shake everybody's hand, hug everybody. And now this is at the end of churches. We done been there 2 hours now. I'm ready to go.
Because that's the part of the community. That's community. That's what she's doing.
I know.
And so, and you're right. There are lots of people that feel like you. There are lots of women and men who, and even young people. That's why I think a lot of people like that Triumph Church method.
Yeah.
You in there like 40 minutes and you out of there. So, but really, where do you build connection though? Because you definitely don't build it with the pastor, because he's not there long enough for you to even talk to him. So, and I'm not knocking him.
I get it. Yeah, I like him a lot. It's funny that you make that comparison, because and it's the people who go to these churches see this. This is no shade on any other pastors, but for me, we had, because originally we joined Second Ebenezer. This was a while ago. I was going there before my wife was.
Okay.
So then it got a little bit too formal, dramatic for me, and so I said, okay, they was doing a little bit too much for me. So we end up going to Triumph. I like Ken Lott. My wife went there. She said it wasn't. She was like, she's like, I can't. She said, I don't quite get what
You're not making a connection.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. She wasn't making a connection. She was like, by the time I get in it, it's over with, So for me, like, Ken Lott, that part, I was like, okay, he just giving you the word, you in and you out. Second Eb, it's a little bit more fluff to it, But yeah, so that's the difference. You had the two difference in the far as the churches are concerned. Like, I want to get in, get it, and get on out. That's Ken Lott. You want a little bit more connection and stuff like that. You don't mind being there an hour, maybe some might be an hour and a half. That's Second Eb, or maybe some other churches as well. But yeah, I understand. Like I said, I'm not knocking either, because you need to go where you're gonna get what it is, where you're gonna be fed at. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I believe both of those pastors will tell you the exact same thing, or those bishops. I don't know. I know Van is a bishop now. I'm not for sure if
He's not a bishop. I don't even. It doesn't even sound like he's interested in that's not even important for him. So
yeah.
I
But
mean
yeah,
that's cool too, because that's not everybody's.
but you need to go where you're gonna get fed at, though.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think both of those pastors would agree with that. You definitely need to go where you're going to be fed. So I just think it's definitely important that I definitely think that church should definitely be a foundation in any marriage. It should be one of the hallmarks of a marriage. You got to have a good, solid foundation. I mean, I believe the word tells you a house can't stand on a shaky foundation. You definitely need to have that, especially going into it. Why do you think?
Go ahead.
No, why do you think Black people in general, like we shun from seeking mental health support, counseling and things like that? Like, why has that always been? I think it's starting to change now. You're seeing a lot of people doing self-care, trying to take care of themselves. But why do you think that was always something that we like, oh no, you going to counseling, you crazy?
Because that's exactly what you said. That's why it was like, no, we don't go to therapy. We go to church. We go to church and pray.
Yeah.
And back in the day, therapy was a white people thing. So it was the images that you saw. Back years ago, when you had an issue like depression or bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, people were locked in institutions for the rest of their lives. So yeah, that is looked upon as crazy. So but now it is, thank God, it's starting to shift. And the good thing about it is that our community is stepping up. People who have platforms and are Black, they're stepping up to talk about
mental health issues.
And what we're not realizing, and I am a staff writer for our church, our national church's newsletter, and that's going to be my next piece that I write about, is the silent epidemic of Black men committing suicide. Like, is really at a high alarming rate right now.
Really?
Yes, for sure. And people are not talking about it. People are not aware of it. But if you think about it, I mean, it's happening, and it's happening more frequently than not.
Well, it's clearly it's not being reported by the media, because this is you making me aware. I'm this year's old today finding that out.
For sure, yeah. So and my first article that I did for our newsletter was an article about Black men and mental health. And I always say that generally with men, you see three responses. One is nothing's wrong, and they kind of go inward and shut down. They don't talk about their feelings, because that's what men don't talk about their feelings. That's the kind of thing that they were kind of taught.
Right.
The second one is you see men get defensive when you talk to them. They're automatically defensive because they feel attacked. They're not really hearing what you say. It's just the way what you're saying is making them feel. Don't ask me no questions. Don't ask me where I'm going. Don't ask me what I'm doing, because they get defensive. Right. And the other one that covers all the other feelings is anger.
Okay.
So anger covers I'm hurt, I feel abandoned, I feel rejected, I'm in grief. Anger covers all of that. And so those are generally the three responses that you see in men. And when I say that to most men, they like, yeah, that'd be me. That'd be me. Because men have not been allowed to understand that it's okay to express your feelings. Part of the problem is that they don't have the language to connect what they're feeling to words. That's part of the problem.
Can you break that down for me?
So if I'm hurt, but I've been told that men don't cry, then I don't have the communication to tell you what's wrong with me. So now I act out. Anger is the one that's acceptable, because people get angry. So men generally
understand anger.
Everybody understand anger, and it really may not be that you're angry. You're an angry person. You're hurting somewhere. A lot of men deal with their self-esteem, poor self-esteem, but they, it comes across in a whole nother way. Like, I'm able to identify it based on how I see people act and behave. But a lot of people don't understand that a lot of men are really, really broken and have not been given any outlet to say it's okay to be broken, and it's okay for you to talk about it.
Right.
So
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
So that's what I was saying. So when you see that that's generally what people expect. They expect them to be strong and bear a whole lot. And so now you see that the outlet is, I'm either acting out conduct wise, or I'm using substances to medicate and mask, or it's just a lot of behaviors that men engage in because they have not been given the permission to say, hey, I'm not okay and I need to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've had conversations with my wife, like and just from a personal perspective, like, and I'm still not all the way there, but it takes, I think men in general, especially, because I was raised, the people I looked up to were drug dealers, you know what I'm saying? Uh, people who were doing wrong in the community. I looked up to and idolized these people. So, and those people kind of, we don't show our feelings to women, you know what I'm saying? So, but saying that, I was having a conversation with her, like, it's hard for me and probably other men as well to be vulnerable to women. One, because that's how we were raised. Like, you don't do that. That's not what a man does. And like you mentioned something earlier, like, we were raised, little boys don't cry. Stop crying. You know what I'm saying? You don't cry. You don't do that. Man up. But then you move forward past that as you get into your more formative years. The culture kind of taught us that as well. But I told her, like, it's hard to be vulnerable to a woman because the first time we see a woman take advantage of that, we go right to those places that you shared. We shut down. Oh, hell no. You know what I'm saying? Here I am being vulnerable, and then this is what I get. So it's hard for us to be able to do that, but it has to start somewhere. So I get what you're saying. Like, that vulnerability thing is still something that I'm working on as a man. And I'm sure it's a lot of other men that feel the same way, because the first time we see a mofo getting dogged, we like, oh, see, he shouldn't have been. No, there's certain things you just gotta, no, she don't need to know that. Don't tell her that. Man up.
Yeah. I mean, then some women have been raised to emasculate men. They saw their mothers do it and they picked it up. And that's the thing, when I see that in a couple, when I'm working with couples, and if I identify that, I kind of really bring that to the forefront. Like, you cannot emasculate your man and expect him to be doing all these things. It's like, you tearing him down,
right.
And we should be really encouraging him and lifting him up. And so a lot of women, they don't get that either. So again, it's twofold. We play a role in a lot of things that go on with our men. We do play a role in the way we raise our sons, and really now the way women are raising sons now. Oh my God! So it's just a whole lot of.
When you say that, what do you mean? How women are raising their sons now?
Just and I don't get, like, my son and I, we're extremely close. But I do, I remember there was a point in time I had to realize, like, if I continue to tell him everything to do, he will not be able to form his own deductive reasoning, his own critical thinking. He needs to have space to do that. I remember when he was about 10 years old or something, and he wanted to ride his bike. We live in Farmington Hills, so he wanted to ride his bike with his friends. And I'm like, oh no, like, like, go around the neighborhood. And he had to say, he's like, Mama, I'll be okay. You got to let me go at some point to try to figure some stuff out. So I did. But he had his cell phone. I was like, call me when you get where your destination is, check in. And he did that. So, but he told me that a couple of times throughout him growing up, he had, Mama, you got to do such, you got to, so he had to say that to me. So, and people think, like, even my friends, like, they'll have, like, you and your son, you and Darius, this and that. And, I don't really listen to that, because some of these same women got sons that's 40 and 50 that they still,
taken care of.
In some degree, or they did at some point. We never stop being mothers, and you never stop being a father. Like, for fathers, it gets different for fathers, but we don't stop being mothers. We you're parenting adult children. You have to learn how to parent your adult children, and that's another thing too. You got to let them go and do, because they're going to make mistakes, and all you have to do is try to advise them and raise them the best you can. So when I say that, it's like, when you see generationally now, like with you got people that's 30 and 40 years old, that's still at home, just it's just crazy now. Or we
Mhm.
want them to grow up too fast. We want them to be men and they not men. You know, women, because of all the I'm alone, the sons become the husbands in some
Mhm.
form. You know, it's just a lot of, you know, a lot of craziness in that
And
regard.
right, and then to what you just mentioned, like, and when women say, "Oh, he's a mama's boy," here it is. You got that son that you're talking about, not your son in particular. I'm just saying in general, that son who has come to surrogate husband for his mom. Now he's getting involved into a relationship where the woman that he's involved with, like, okay, I know you love your mama, but I need you over here. And
Exactly.
and then the thing is, they don't address that, but they still get married. Now he's still a mama boy, but y'all haven't addressed that. But now y'all married. Now all that stuff, and what's so crazy is that they say marriage, um, it doesn't um it doesn't cure things, it illuminates them. Like it'll
For
bring a
sure.
lot
For
of
sure.
stuff to the forefront. It'll
For
make them
sure.
bigger than what they were. So that same man who was you knew going in was somewhat of a mama's boy. Now that has been magnified 10 times now, the fact y'all married, because now you're competing with the mom.
Yeah, and it, you know, like I there the term mama's boy, like my son, I would say that he's a mama's boy, not from the sense of we don't have an unhealthy or toxic type of relationship though.
Mhm.
Like we're very close. We talk openly, you know, for 6.5 years it was me and him before I remarried. And
Okay.
so we've always been close. My son he was born a preemie, so from womb to now, like we were just like really close and tight.
Mhm.
But he's not like where he don't make decisions without calling his mom. You know, he ain't
Yeah.
that type of kid, and I don't
Okay.
want him to be that type of kid either. So you know, I tried to do my best, you know, for us to raise him to be independent and be an independent thinker. Like I would tell him as a child, like you need to be a leader. Like if you come home and you tell me you got in trouble at school for some stuff that somebody got you into, you're in trouble.
Right.
If you're gonna do something, it better be your decision.
Gotcha.
So, you know, so I those are things I instilled in him as a child.
Mhm.
So, you know, so yeah, you do get these men and their mothers, they have horrible boundaries. So now it's like when he get married, oh, you done stole my son from me. No,
Mhm.
really in your mind, she stole your husband from you because he's not your husband, but that's how you treated him,
Right.
like a placeholder because you don't have a man.
Right.
So it's a lot of unhealthy boundaries between some children and their mother, especially sons and mother, and then they feel obligated to make sure their mother is okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But as you get a wife, the Bible says you got to lead to cleave. So,
Exactly.
you know, but and mothers need to understand, and fathers need to put sons need to put a boundary on that immediately. And you're right, a lot of them don't. They don't. They don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You said
and it
something.
becomes a problem.
Right. You mentioned something earlier, because I know me and my wife had a conversation about this as well. For me, the like I look at because this is the only thing I can kind of relate to, I can think of. You had Good Times and then you had the Cosby Show. Like I wasn't a real big fan of the Cosby Show. Why? Because that wasn't my reality. It just really wasn't my reality. My wife, on the other hand, it was hers, because she said she knew Black people that were like that. I said, really? She said, yeah. Now, mind you, we went to middle school together. We kind of lost touch at the high school. She went to a different high school, but she stayed next door to my grandfather, which I saw periodically. I still stayed in that same neighborhood, but we were kind of missing one another because she went off to a different area. But then we reconnected later on in life and then got married. But I tell her, like, the Cosby Show wasn't my reality. It just wasn't. I can relate more to Good Times. Now, don't get me wrong. We wasn't living in that sort of poverty that you saw in Good Times. I do remember a couple of occasions where my mama, Joyce, and she still, you know, thank God she's still with us. But I remember a couple of times she had to put some stuff together in the pot. She called it goulash. We had those moments, but I remember it being a lot more times where it was we had good days than we had bad, you know. But I say that we just didn't have, at least for me, it wasn't the Cosby Show. So I couldn't really relate to that. Like when people were rushing home to see the Cosby Show, and I saw it, I was like, this fugazi, like this ain't reality. But my wife,
and that's why they came up with the concept to show that this is a reality. That's exactly why they did the show, to show that this is a reality.
Right.
that you have educated people raising families in middle class, you know, but for many people, like you said, that was not what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
So, and other people may have were drawn to it because it was an idea of something they could have.
Right, right, right.
Even if they didn't have it, this is something that we can have.
Right. I mean,
So
I always inspired to want more. My mom used to tell me all the time, like, you got what she used to tell me, you got Kool-Aid money and champagne dreams. Like, you always want more. But that's how I've always been. You know, I've always felt like I deserve more, I want more, and I'm gonna get it. So I never had this attitude, even though I know the system is stacked against us, especially as Black men and even as a people. But I wasn't always saying, oh, the man keeping me down. No, because I saw other Black people making it happen.
mm-hmm.
I saw them making it happen. So I'm like, hey, if they can do it, it's not a reason why I can't. But I brought it up just to say, like, that just wasn't my reality, the Cosby Show. But I totally get the concept and why they did what they did, you know, for the show. Cause like, hey, this was this is possible. And there are Black families in the middle class that are making it happen. 2-parent households, and they're raising their children. And I did watch it enough to see some of the problems that they may have been having with their children. Like, okay, that is a real issue in the Black family, you know? So I did watch it enough to recognize those things, but that just wasn't my reality. Like, you know.
Yeah, even down to people when they see Black kids, like, oh, they're very mannerable. Okay, they're supposed to be. Like, it's like a surprise that they're mannerable because you expect, you know, even that stereotype, Black kids are just savages and they just run around unkept and untamed and, you know, all that kind of crazy
Well,
stuff.
that's the images that we see from the, the media posting, of course. But you know what's so crazy is that I didn't been out to department stores. And you know, the first kids I see running around acting a damn fool.
It's not us.
Not us. And I'm looking like, I didn't been times I wanted to snatch a knot, like,
me too.
So here and
me
stop
too.
Talking back to their parents and just doing all kind of. I'm like, man, listen. My mama was the type. If you commit the infraction there, that's exactly where I'm gonna get you at.
Yeah, most Black.
I don't mind. Don't mean she ain't gonna get you when you get home, but you gonna get it right then and there.
Yeah, most Black mothers
do that now, though.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying too. Like, with kids have no like basic boundaries. Kids don't have bedtimes now. You got 4 and 5 year olds. They up at 12 and 1 o'clock. Like, kids just don't have basic structure. They don't have basic structure at all. Like, it's just crazy, you know, because the mom is so caught up on social media. She watching TikTok. The kid ain't in the bed. Like, no, I told somebody, one of my clients the other day, I said, one of the things I used to enjoy doing before I got remarried, and it was just my son and I, and I would put him to bed. I would like, this is mommy time now. And my favorite thing to do was to take a candlelight bath. Like, that was my favorite thing to do with music and all of that.
Yeah.
Or he would go to bed and I would clean up at night because I'm a night owl, and he would be in bed. But I would tell him, okay, it's time to go to bed. It's mommy time.
Right.
And so, you know, you don't see that. Like, why is your kid up at 9 and 10 o'clock and they 6 years old and 7 years old? I mean, why are they still up?
Exactly.
So
that just made me think about, did you see on the news where that Tyler was waving a gun? He had got out. I forget what happened. Listen, so the neighbor came to the door. I don't know. He came there looking for somebody, rung the doorbell. The baby opened the door, pointed a gun. So he quickly shut the door back, called the police. Before the police got there, the kid was running around in the hallway with the gun, just running around in the middle of the hallway with the gun. So the police finally came. They did a search. No, the guy who came to the door was clearly asleep. I'm assuming this must have been the father of the Tyler. Said he was asleep. And then so the police asked him about the gun. He claimed he didn't know anything about it, but he said sometime his friend comes there and he keeps his gun there. That's where he messed up at. Because then now you didn't just told the police, like, okay, sometime there is a gun here. But anyway, they searched it, found the gun neatly placed in this bureau drawer. So then they ended up arresting him.
As they should have.
They arrested him. But he was claiming he didn't know anything about it. But you clearly see that then what happened was the neighbor, thank God for those Ring videos, brought the video, and you could clearly see the baby running around the hallway waving a gun. They blurred the baby's face out, but he's running around the hallway waving a gun. Somebody could have been hurt.
Including him.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, man.
So the man was in there asleep, so the child knew where the gun was. He seen it. He knew where it was because he seen it being taken in and out of that spot. That's how he knew where the gun was. Yeah. So it's like my son's dog. My son has a dog. So I was eating some licorice, and I was eating my licorice, and I put it in a drawer. The dog knew that I put the licorice in the drawer, so she's sniffing around my nightstand drawer because she knows the licorice. So she saw it, and then she smelled it, like this baby saw this man taking his gun in and out of this drawer. That's why he knew where it was, and he got it out of there. So yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
No gun case locked up or anything. I was just like, that could have been all kind of tragic.
No matter how many times he say to lock your gun up, people just will not do it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Like, I guess our guest decided not to come on, huh?
I know. I guess I don't know what happened, but I definitely thank you for taking the time. I mean, we'll still get this posted up because it's been a very interesting conversation. Hopefully, people get glean some stuff from it, and I'm still gonna post it and put it on the page on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Coming on and talking with me as long as you did. But hey, I'll see you next week, same time. We'll have a different guest on this time. We'll probably get them back on because I'm about to hang up when we get off the call. I'm about to call her, but right now, like, what happened to you? And find out what happened. I'm sure it something going on with the family, or whatever. Because I know she just wouldn't miss just to be missing. But I definitely appreciate you, coming on and talking with me.
Absolutely.
And definitely with some interesting tidbits. I'll definitely learn some stuff. And I'll see you at our next training session.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for staying to the end of the show. Again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button at the bottom, and don't forget to leave any comments or questions. Our next guest will be Dominic and Geneva Connors. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good tidbits. We're looking at some people who have a lot of skin in the game. They've been married 20 plus years. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'll see you next time.